I came to the conclusion that prosecution made us safer because Spin Ghoul was found guilty and he's in prison for the rest of his life. And those Gold Star families and the military men and women who were affected by the attack, they don't have closure. They're still in pain, but they have a sense that their government cared.
Welcome to Open Book. I am your host, Anthony Scaramucci. Joining us now is Jake Tapper. In addition to being a world-famous CNN anchor, he's a best-selling author, and he's out with a new book, Race Against Terror, Chasing an Al-Qaeda Killer at the Dawn of the Forever War. I mean, first of all, it's an amazing title, but it's an even better book. And Jake has been on the show before, so he knows the drill here. I learned so much in this book that I did not know about Al-Qaeda, about our tactics in terms of how we were deploying ourselves to kill these people or capture these people. But why this book? What drew you to this? And, you know, I know you've researched it over a year ago, et cetera, put it together. What got you interested in this topic, Jake?
The truth is, I just heard the story in a situation of happenstance, and I just thought it was fascinating. The story begins about how I came across the story. 3 years ago, I threw a birthday party for my son. It was a paintball party, so it was out in the boonies in Virginia. So adults were invited to stick around and have pizza and refreshments.
Right,
And
exactly.
one of the dads came over to me and said, "Oh, I know so-and-so from your book, The Outpost." And I said, "Oh yeah, that book was really tough to write because the Pentagon keeps such crappy records and they don't share them." And he said, "Tell me about it." And he starts telling me the story, starts spinning this yarn about how he's an assistant U.S. attorney in Brooklyn. He gets a call. The Italians have picked up this guy who claims to be Al-Qaeda. They go to Italy. They hear him confess to killing Americans and conspiring to blow up the U.S. embassy. And then he and his colleagues at the U.S. Attorney's Office and also in the FBI have like a finite period of time to prove it, to prove the case. Here, it's like the opposite of a whodunit. Here's the done it. Here's the guy who done it.
Yeah.
But you have to prove the case. And he just tells me how they proved the case. And I love that stuff on like police procedurals, just the finding the fingerprint, finding the witness, all that investigative stuff. And it was just so interesting. I said to him when he was done telling the story, has anybody written about this? And he said, people wrote about it when he was tried in 2017 and sentenced in 2018, but nobody really had ever captured the story of like how improbable all of this was. I mean, this was, as of now, still the only foreign terrorist ever tried in a criminal court in the U.S. for killing service members in a war zone. That's never happened before, although there is a guy in Virginia right now who might become the second foreign terrorist. He was behind the Abbey Gate shooting, suicide bombing. So anyway, it was just this once-in-a-lifetime story, and it had not been covered. And most of the stuff, the nonfiction stuff that I write, is because I want to know more about it, and nobody else is reporting it. So I go and report it.
I mean, there's just so many different things in here, though. You've got to build a criminal case against this person. You've got the justice versus terrorism, civil courts versus military tribunals. But let's go directly to Ibrahim Harun. I'm assuming I'm pronouncing his name roughly right. But he's called Spin for what reason? Why do they call him Spin?
Spin Ghoul is Pashto for the White Rose. And when he was in terrorist training camp, this guy was from originally his ethnicity is Niger. He was raised in Saudi Arabia, but he's from Niger. So he's very, very, very dark African, not a drop of non-African blood in his ancestry. And, there's racism in Al-Qaeda and there's racism in the Arab world. And he was called the White Rose because he was very black. And that was the big joke in the terrorist training camp. But it was his nom de guerre, his war name. And when the Italians called the FBI and said, "Have you heard?" He says his name is Spin Ghoul. "Have you ever heard of him?" The Americans had heard of him because there were detainees at Gitmo that had talked about him because he was somebody who had successfully participated in a deadly ambush against U.S. service members and also was then sent to Nigeria to blow up the American embassy there. But he did not end up doing that. But you know, the Al-Qaeda operatives knew who he was and had talked about him.
So let's go to David Bitcower. He's the assistant U.S. attorney in the Eastern District of New York. He's one of the central prosecutors.
Yeah, he's the dad. He's the dad that told me the story at the paintball party.
Yeah. So I mean, this is unbelievable. You're at the paintball party, and you literally have a Jean le Carré novel being regaled to you, but it's actually true.
It's a good lesson for reporters. Like, ask people when you're in a social situation. Ask people their best story that they have in their back pocket. Maybe you get a book out of it.
Well, I mean, what I'm impressed with he. I mean, I don't know him, but he seems like a very by the book guy, though, right? He's going through the process. He's using the judicial system. He's even concerned about things like civil procedure. And there's something in our country called the Constitution, Jake. I think you've heard of the Constitution. There's
I have heard of it.
See a few people in the country that want to ignore the Constitution, but not this guy. Bitcower is like a by the book guy. So tell us a little bit about him, and tell us a little bit about the juggling dilemma of bringing the case and how he has to work the case into the matrix.
So he's an assistant U.S. attorney, which sounds impressive to me, but it's not that high up on the totem pole of the judicial system. So he and his colleague Shreve Ariel start working this case, but they have to, you know, they have to work it because it's 2011. Their choice is let the Italians deal with him, and the Italians will just let him free. They'll put him in a refugee camp and he'll escape. And then, you know, he has said he wants to kill as many Americans as possible. He has said the 1998 embassy bombings are his, you know, that's his matrix, his life's ambition. So they really have an impossible choice. Do they try to prove this incredibly difficult case, or do they not do it and risk having this guy go free? So to them, there's no choice. They have to try to prosecute him. And it just becomes this very difficult challenge. First, they have to figure out which ambush he participated in Afghanistan. Then they have to track down all the information they can about that ambush, track down all the soldiers they can. They have to track down any sort of physical evidence from that ambush that might exist. And, you know, even if there's a record of it, photographs of it, they have to then try to find the physical objects, which, you know, this is a battle that took place in 2003, and they're in 2011, 2012, trying to track down evidence. And they have the challenge of having very, very skeptical bosses who give their case a lot of scrutiny. Well, how are you going to prove this? How are you going to prove that? At the time, it's tough to imagine, but a lot of people might remember that in 2011, 2012, the idea of bringing a foreign terrorist to the United States to be tried was so controversial. Republicans, Democrats, nobody wanted them here. There was almost this, I mean, you know, it had only been 10 years after 9/11. People were still terrorized. And there was this fear that if they come here, maybe they'll escape and maybe they'll walk around the streets just killing people. In addition, in 2010, there had been the trial of the first and only Gitmo detainee tried in a criminal court, this guy Galani. He was tried and he was acquitted of 284 of the 285 charges. This has to do with the 1998 embassy bombings.
Yep.
So he was acquitted of all but one of the charges. So there was a real fear. If we bring him here, what happens if we don't get a conviction? Or what happens if he escapes, and this and that. So there were all these hurdles that they had to clear. And all these people in the Justice Department and the Obama White House and the U.S. Attorney's Office in Brooklyn, all of these people that they had to satisfy. In addition to them, of course, that's the U.S. Attorney's Office. Then there's the FBI. They're investigating the case with Bitcower and Shreve. And they are also doing their investigation and trying to find out as much information as they can. What's amazing is that they pulled this all off, that they got all the evidence that they needed, that they tracked down physical evidence, witness testimony, etc. But the case was just so fascinating, and the expertise that you learn. I mean, this is it was written. I wrote this because I just thought it was an interesting story, and I wanted to write it like a thriller so that people would enjoy it, but also like learn something that I learned about this case. But also, it is kind of a love letter to a functioning government, where prosecutors and the FBI and politicians and public servants, everybody works together and tries to protect Americans. And I don't know that we have the same situation going on today, because a lot of the prosecutors who are really experts on these types of investigations are being sidelined or even fired for political reasons. There's a guy in the book named George Toscas. He did not cooperate with the book. He didn't talk to me ever. Not a friendly to media kind of guy, but I know that he was amazing at his job, and he's been sidelined because he signed off on the Mar-a-Lago classified documents warrant. And there are a number of decisions like that that have been made in the last 9 months, and I think they make the country less safe.
I mean, I have so many different reactions to the book, but that was one. You got there a little bit ahead of me. I read the book. I took criminal procedure in law school. I obviously took constitutional law. And I was like, it was so refreshing to see that process. There's another narrative going on right now in our country that I'd like you to address. And that is what you just said. People are like, well, the book is messy, Jake, right? It's messy. You've got to go through process. You've got to deal with people that are double and triple checking your work. And the presumption is always on the innocent. And the presumption is always that the government has to be off the back of the person, even if it's a person that's a wretched terrorist. And yet now we have people who, if they don't like a court ruling, they'll say that there's an insurrection going on or there's an act of judicial terrorism. And so there's a group of people in the country that have said, hey, this process that got us 250 years of success and great prosperity and industrialization, innovation, et cetera, we want to throw that out the window for something that's cleaner, in their minds at least, cleaner and more expeditious. And so when you write a book like this and you see what's going on right now, what do we do? What did we do wrong? Did we do anything wrong, or is this just the way the civilization works, and we burn a fuse and we eventually get to people that no longer want to respect the process, or did we do something wrong that triggered all of this?
Well, it's a complicated question. I mean, so this was the first foreign terrorist ever tried in a criminal court for killing American service members abroad. Donald Trump is attempting to bring the second foreign terrorist to a criminal court for killing American service members abroad. This guy, Jafar, who's in a prison or a jail in Virginia right now for his role in the Abbey Gate suicide bombings. So there is, to a degree, a recognition, I think, that the criminal justice pursuit of terrorists can be an effective way to do it. And early in Trump's first term, Attorney General Sessions was upset to hear about the prosecution of Spin Ghoul. There was an attempt to bring another terrorist to the U.S. for prosecution, and he would not have it because he doesn't think terrorists deserve to have rights, and he was not having it. He was not happy to hear about Spin Ghoul, but he didn't interrupt the trial because that was already about to happen. But we are now in a situation where the prosecution in criminal court of Jafar is going to happen. So on one level, I think that society has evolved, including the Trump administration, to keep pursuing this lane that I think proved successful. And if you just look at the comparison of how many terrorists have been tried in a military tribunal versus how many in criminal courts has just been far more effective. It's more than 600 terrorists have been tried, most of them convicted. And in military tribunals, I think it's 2 people have been convicted, and one of them, one of the charges was overturned. So it's not even close. Now, on the other hand, as you note, there is this push to label judges that come up with rulings that the administration disagrees with, to call them terrorists. That's Stephen Miller you're quoting, I believe.
Yep.
And in addition to George Toscas, who was legendary and has now been sidelined, last week, the guy in charge of the Jafar prosecution, a line prosecutor named Michael Ben-Ari was fired. Why was he fired? Because some MAGA activist named Julie Kelly said online that he was against, she guessed that he was against the Comey indictment, at which our sources suggest at CNN that that's not true at all. He had nothing to do with it. But they fired him. He put up a letter on his door on his last day, Friday, in which he said that his firing hurts the case against Jafar and that current Justice Department leadership is more interested in going after the president's perceived enemies than protecting the American people. That is a stark warning from a line prosecutor for the American people. Now, why is that not bigger news? I don't know. I say it every time I can. I did it on my show. I wrote about it for The Atlantic and for CNN. I can't explain it, but we are in a situation where this lack of respect for expertise could end up really hurting us.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think we both honestly know it's the Steve Bannon flood the zone. They flooded the zone with so much stuff that, we've sort of gotten numb to a lot of the things that are going on, and it's difficult and hard to react to everything. So I want to get to the radicalization of this man. He's undocumented. He's in Saudi Arabia. He goes, I guess he goes on a pilgrimage, as you're describing. And he stays in Saudi, and he gets radicalized. And so what's going on in Saudi Arabia that creates Al-Qaeda, also known as the base? What tell us about the Wahhabis. Tell us about the secular Saudis versus the more orthodox Saudis, and how does this terrorist community develop there, and why?
So Spin Ghoul is raised in Saudi Arabia. His parents are from Niger. They went to Saudi Arabia to do pilgrimage to Mecca, and then they just stayed. And they basically were just indentured servants that lived in basically in poverty. So there weren't a lot of options for Spin Ghoul. And if people think racism's bad in the United States, they should see how Black people are treated in Saudi Arabia, because it's not even close. He was raised at a time when, in the 1990s and the late 80s, jihadists were regarded as heroes. And it wasn't even particularly controversial before 9/11 in that part of the world. It was the heroes fighting against the Soviets in Afghanistan, the heroes fighting against Russia in Chechnya. A lot of the victims of aggression in the Balkans were Muslim. So he was raised in a place where, successful jihadists were his childhood heroes. And there was one in his neighborhood who worked for the Saudi government and was able to forge for him travel documents, so that when he was old enough, he just went into the rat line and just flew to Pakistan, where he was easily hooked up with Al-Qaeda operatives that brought him to Afghanistan, and where he trained. This is before 9/11. This is where he trained in the Al-Farouq terrorist camp and the like. And you can almost, I wouldn't say see the appeal of it, but you can almost understand why a young man with no future might find appealing the notion of going on an adventure of some sort. And if he's being propagandized his whole life about the importance of fighting the infidel, going to some training camp with his bros might be appealing. And then 9/11 happens, and then all of a sudden it's a different war altogether. But that's how he ended up there. But his zealotry was lifelong. And this becomes part of the debate in the case. Is he sane? Is he even sane? And that's always a discussion, I think, when you deal with any sort of zealot. Where does zealotry end and insanity begin? It's tough to say. But
that would also affect his civil liberties if he's insane too, right? So we have that element of criminal procedure. But so, when I opened the book at first and I read the Forever War, it always hurts me. It's like a dagger in my heart. So there was a very large group of people right after 9/11 that were actually begging the Bush administration not to overreact to the terrorist attack. And one of those people, frankly, was a Wall Street luminary that's now been demonized by the right. It was George Soros. He wrote a op-ed. It was either in the Wall Street Journal or the New York Times, Jake. He said, listen, it's a horrible tragedy. Don't overreact. You'll play into bin Laden's hands, And bin Laden wrote about this on the dark web. He said he would hit us on our homeland. We would respond aggressively. We would bomb their mud huts. We would kill a lot of people, but we would bleed out our treasury. We would kill they would kill our military over there. And then we would go after our own civil liberties. And when I think about this case and the forever war, not to overuse a baseball analogy, I feel like it's 6-0 bin Laden. Yeah, bin Laden's been replaced. He's dead and gone. There's a relief pitcher in now, but he got a lot right. We blew a hole in our treasury. We've mounted we went from George Washington to George W. Bush, $7 trillion, Jake. We added 31 trillion, Barack Obama, Donald Trump, Biden, Trump. And so I'm just wondering if the forever war, if we're 50 years after the forever war, sometime 50 years from now, 2076, are they saying, wow, they hurt themselves so badly, and then they tribalized, they couldn't pull it back together? Because this book, if it was written about a 2025 case, would give me great hope. But this book is not written about a 2025 case. It's written about a 2011 case. So what say to you to all of that in the context of the forever war, Jake?
It is a depressing and bleak thought that bin Laden could have been correct in his prediction of an overreaction. And it reminds me of two things. It reminds me of President Biden going to Israel and telling Israel not to
don't make the mistake that we made. Remember, he said that.
Don't act out of anger.
Right.
Don't make the mistake we made. And I don't think Netanyahu was listening. And it also reminds. I just randomly saw a clip on Threads of this very profound movie, in retrospect, called The Siege. That what's unbelievable about it's a Denzel Washington, Annette Bening, Bruce Willis thriller that I think it's by Edward Zwick or Marshall Hershkovitz. I forget which one, but it's about. First of all, it came out in 1998. That's what's the most amazing thing about The Siege. It's about Islamic terrorism happening in Brooklyn. And then it's about basically declaring martial law in Brooklyn because of the big Muslim population there. And the argument is it's a bad idea. Bruce Willis plays the general who is telling them, do not declare martial law and send us in there. You don't want us to do it. And then there's another scene where Denzel Washington is saying, what if what they want us to do is to declare martial law and get rid of our civil liberties? What if what they want us to do is round up kids? And, and it's everything. And like it's the fact is that this came out in 1998 is what makes it so profound. Not if this movie had come out in, 5 years ago, who cares? But like the fact that it predicted the overreaction, I think it's fair to say. What's interesting about the war on terror in terms of this book, in my view, is I go into it with an open mind about, I go into it assuming that President Bush and Vice President Cheney and Secretary Rumsfeld are all trying to keep us safe, and their 9/11 was a horrible day and it terrified the country, it terrified the world, it changed everything, and they're trying to do what they need to do to keep us safe. The question is, and it's easy to do this with the luxury of 2025, is did what they do make us safer? And in terms of this small slice of the war on terror, the idea of, is it better to take these foreign terrorists and throw them in Gitmo, or put them in a military tribunal, or prosecute them in a criminal court? I came away, I did not go into it with this mindset, and I don't write this like a polemic. It's people can reach whatever conclusion they want. But my view is that the way that they did it with Spin Ghoul, prosecuting him, getting evidence, building an airtight case makes us safer. Because I think about an alternative world where he's picked up by the Italians in 2008, and instead of going to a criminal court and having this huge investigation into what he did, he's just thrown in Gitmo. And then I got to assume after 5 or 10 years, somebody would have his case and they'd say, you don't even have any evidence against him. All you have is this crazy confession and he's a lunatic. Who knows? And then the Americans would probably be like, oh, you're right. And then they'd send him to Niger, Saudi Arabia, or Oman. And then he would go and kill as many Americans as he could. And so I came to the conclusion, and again, this isn't in the book. This is just my view of what I learned, and maybe people will leave the book and have a different interpretation. That's how I wrote it. I wrote it like a thriller, and people can make up their own mind. But I think that prosecution made us safer because Spin Ghoul, this doesn't spoil the book, but the Spin Ghoul was found guilty, and he's in prison for the rest of his life. And those Gold Star families and the military men and women who were affected by the attack, they don't have closure. They're still in pain, but they have the sense that their government cared. And they do have an ability to, okay, the killer is in prison, and whether or not they can go on with their life, I don't know. But that's, all the families, all the 9/11 families waiting for these trials of 9/11 co-conspirators that still haven't happened yet because the military commissions can't do it. It's incredible.
I'm with you, Jake. It made us safer, but it made the innocent safer. It made the innocent safer. The unjustly accused, it's also made safer.
Yeah.
So, all right. Yeah. So you remember this from my podcast. This is something people like, so we do it every time. I've got your book down to 5 words. I'm going to say the word, and then you react to the word. Okay, you ready? If I say the word terrorism, Jake, you say what?
Scary.
Justice.
Elusive.
Oh, that's a really good one, actually. I'm going to use that. Extremism.
Common.
What about Al-Qaeda?
Organized.
Yeah, it's incredible. It's literally like a corporation when you really think about the layers of it. All right, let's go to your protagonist or your antagonist, Ibrahim Spin Harun.
Zealot.
Crazy? Mental illness?
No, I don't think so. And that's a debate in the book. Yeah. And it's one that
that was my conclusion. Yeah, I'm sorry not to interrupt you.
I think there's a big debate about how crazy he is, how crazy he isn't. And I don't ultimately think he's crazy. I think he's doing what they called in the book the jihad of annoyance. Yeah. He had nothing to do. He had no way of getting the Americans back other than to act insane. 100%. But it was an act.
Yep. And then, obviously the disruption, the fear, that's what they were looking for. That's why it's organized. That's why it's organized terrorism as opposed to organized crime. The title of this book is Race Against Terror, Chasing an Al-Qaeda Killer at the Dawn of the Forever War. I'll tell you what, you got a great review in the New York Times. Congratulations on that. And people should go out and buy this book. They'll learn a lot about our system. And it's as good as your fiction, Jake. You've written some fiction books too.
I learned a lot of lessons from fiction in terms of writing a propulsive narrative.
I wanted to turn the page. I had known the story, but I didn't understand the detail, the complexity of the story. And I was turning the page quickly in this book. Thank you for writing it, and thank you for coming on Open Book.
As always, a real pleasure. Thanks, Anthony.
Time is your most precious asset. It is the only thing that you can never get back. And the thing that I always say to young people is I ask them this one question. Would you trade lives with Warren Buffett? He is worth $130 billion. He has access to absolutely anyone in the world. He flies around on private jets. He has mansions all over the place. He reads and learns for a living. But you would not trade lives with him simply because he is 95 years old. And there's no way you would agree to trade the amount of time he has left for all the money in the world. You just wouldn't do it. And similarly, he would trade places with you in a heartbeat. He would give up everything that he has to be young again. So you know in the back of your mind, through that math, that your time has quite literally incalculable value. And then on a daily basis, you spend time scrolling on this thing, looking around, comparing yourself to others, taking on stupid things that you don't want to do, things that aren't moving the needle in your life. So you need to have this mindset shift to recognize that time is literally the only thing that you have. And leveraging it effectively, deploying it into things that actually really create energy in your life, recognizing that you only get one shot at this, that is the real wealth.
Okay, welcome to Open Book. I am your host, Anthony Scaramucci, and joining me is Sawill Bloom. He is an entrepreneur. He's a writer. He's a content creator, but very soon he's going to be a New York Times best-selling author. He's written an incredible book. The title of the book is The 5 Types of Wealth, a transformative guide to design your dream life. And by the way, I follow you on Twitter, follow you on Instagram. And you went deep here. You give great color on these different social media platforms, but the content in this book is fantastic. And what I love about this book, if you don't mind, because I spent the weekend reading it, is you can pick it up. You don't have to start on chapter 1. I could go to the middle of the book and start reading, and I've got content that's connected to me. And so that's a tough thing to do, Sawill. So congratulations on that. And tell me first a little bit about yourself and why you wrote this book. And then we'll go into why I like it so much. Hey, everyone. It's Anthony Scaramucci here with some straight talk. Let me tell you, we've got 85% of our viewers who haven't hit the subscribe button yet. What's up with that? It hurts. Listen, I made my career by going all in. Right now, only 15% of our viewers are part of our subscribed family. So please take action. This helps us book more amazing guests. Hit subscribe, join our community, and let's turn these numbers upside down. Now back to the show.
Yeah, well, I appreciate the warm words. And I definitely tried to structure the book for exactly that. So I'm glad you picked up on it. The story of writing this book, the book is not about me, but it very much is a manifestation of my journey. Which is one that I think a lot of people will find themselves in, where you've kind of been handed this default path to success your entire life. And you march down these default paths, you accept these default definitions and these default settings, as David Foster Wallace called them. And you never really take time to question whether those are the things that you actually want to do, whether those are the things that you actually find meaning in, or the things you would actually define as success. And, I found myself on that path, and I was chasing money at the kind of default scoreboard that we all measure ourselves against. And unfortunately, while I was winning that one game, I started to see that a lot of the other areas of my life were suffering. And that was everything from my relationships, with my parents, who I was never seeing, with my sister. Our relationship was strained. My wife and I were struggling to conceive at the time. I was drinking 6-7 nights a week. My mental and physical health were all over the place. So I had these other areas of my life really suffering, while on the outside looking in, you would have said I was winning the game. I had all the markers of success. And so I just started to have this sensation that if that was what winning the game felt like, I had to be playing the wrong game. And I went on this journey to try to figure out what was the right game and what was the way to measure on that broader, better scoreboard for building a healthy, happy, fulfilling life, that war that we are all trying to win in the long run. And that's really what this book is all about. It's about identifying the things that truly matter to you, not what society tells you should matter, not what your parents tell you, not what your friends tell you, and then going and taking action to go and build around those things.
So let's start there. Let's talk about our society for a second, because I think you make some insightful points about the society. And, you join a long line of leaders who try to help people with their lives. The father of the self-help movement for the United States, at least perhaps of the world, is Ben Franklin. He wrote a great book, his autobiography. He also Poor Richard's Almanac. And there was a lot of messaging there. Went on to be Dale Carnegie, Napoleon Hill. There's been a ton of people that have written differently about living a fulfilling life. But what I found interesting about yours is you broke it up into 5 different buckets. And I'll just tell the listeners what they are. It's time, social wealth, mental health/wealth, physical health/wealth, and obviously financial. So I want to start with where you think our society is, because it feels like our society is about financial wealth. It feels like our society is about the totems of financial wealth. So if you're bling, 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 Sawill, then you've made it. But we both know a lot of people that are bling, bling, that are not happy campers. So Tell us about your odyssey from looking at the society. There's an arbitrage between the way the society sees itself, frankly, and the way you write about what is good mental and good financial and physical health. So tell us about that odyssey. Tell us how you got there.
Yeah, I think Peter Drucker, the management theorist, said this best, which is what gets measured gets managed. And that quote really resonates with me because it's a reminder that the thing that you can measure ends up being the thing that you focus on, that you narrow in on, that you sort of myopically optimize around. And in society, that thing that we can measure is money. I mean, money's measurability is a feature, right? It's what allows us to use it and to actually create this culture of capitalism that we all know and respect. But unfortunately, because it is so measurable, it also becomes the thing that we focus on entirely. And the problem is that money isn't nothing. It simply can't be the only thing. And when it becomes the only focus of your life, when it becomes the thing that you measure yourself around, when it becomes the way that you stack yourself up against others, the way that you compare yourself to others, it starts to be unhealthy because it is very much a pathway to the Pyrrhic victory, to winning the battle but losing the war. And all of these other areas of our life, we know in the back of our mind they are important. You know that freedom is more important. You know that your relationships, that your mental and physical health, you know these things. And yet on a daily basis, your actions are going to surround the thing that you can measure. And so when I went on this journey myself and tried to figure this out, I knew that measurement really had to be at the forefront of this. You need a better scoreboard so that when you're making decisions, when you're taking actions, you can make those decisions and take those actions around the broader set of principles that are actually going to contribute to that truly comprehensively wealthy life that you're trying to live.
So when you got to the time wealth part of this book, it left a very big impact on me because you had an equation. I'm searching the book right now, but there was an equation in the book where it's like, okay, take your age. Okay, if you're 65, you're going to live to 80, you have 15. If you see people once a year, you're going to see loved ones 15 more times in your life. And when you write it that way, it becomes a little bit more dramatic. It becomes a little bit more compelling. And I guess what would you say to somebody who's filling their time with meetings, filling their time with, we're going to make an extra $1 today. And again, I'm all for making money. I've dedicated a good part of my life, Sawill, to making money. But I also recognize that if I'm going to miss out on this big opportunity to be with my children or hang out with friends or loved ones or my wife, that there's wealth in that as well. So give me some coaching. Go ahead. What would you say to people?
There's a few things. So first off, making money and pursuing your ambition, there is nothing wrong with that. And this book will never tell you that there's something wrong with that. What it will say is that has to be grounded in something more meaningful than just the pursuit of money. So as you talk about, like, you have made money, you've worked on that in your life, I would argue that pursuit of money has actually been a pursuit of your purpose. You have been grounded in the desire to build something meaningful. You've built a big company. You've built, and hired people, created jobs, built this enterprise that has resulted in you receiving value in return in the form of money. But it wasn't that you were chasing money every single day. You were chasing purpose and grounding yourself in that. And there's nothing wrong with that. What I would say to the person from a time perspective is very simple. Time is your most precious asset. It is the only thing that you can never get back. And the thing that I always say to young people is I ask them this one question. Would you trade lives with Warren Buffett? He is worth $130 billion, last I checked. He has access to absolutely anyone in the world. He flies around on private jets. He has mansions all over the place. He reads and learns for a living. But you would not trade lives with him, simply because he is 95 years old. And there's no way you would agree to trade the amount of time he has left for all the money in the world. You just wouldn't do it. And similarly, he would trade places with you in a heartbeat. He would give up everything that he has to be young again. So in the back of your mind, through that math, that your time has quite literally incalculable value. And then on a daily basis, you spend time scrolling on this thing, looking around, comparing yourself to others, taking on stupid things that you don't want to do, things that aren't moving the needle in your life. So you need to have this mindset shift to recognize that time is literally the only thing that you have. And leveraging it effectively, deploying it into things that actually create energy in your life, recognizing that you only get one shot at this, that is the real wealth.
Okay, let's go to some other stuff in the book. You talk about mental wealth. You talk about the anxieties that people have in their lives and the tribulations that they have in their lives. How do you recommend that people manage that? Right. So, Socrates once said, maybe the best among us are the ones that didn't live. Right. Meaning you have to go through the trials and tribulations of life and the ups and downs, Sawill. How do you manage all that?
I think that the most important point around mental wealth is this idea of space. And I talk about it in the context of creating space in your life. Viktor Frankl, famous psychologist and Holocaust survivor, has this quote that our power exists in the space that we can create between stimulus and response. So if you think about your life, you have this constant stimulus drip coming in, and then you're being told that you have to respond to everything right away. We live in this urgency culture. Every single thing is urgent. So you don't get time to create space because everything is stimulus, response, stimulus, response. Your power exists in your ability to create a little bit of space on a daily basis, and then a lot of space, hopefully on a more regular monthly or quarterly basis, to zoom out, to slow things down, and to see the bigger picture in your life, to actually be able to, pick and choose your moves on the chessboard, if you will. If you think of some of the greatest success stories in history, even in different fields, Lionel Messi, famous soccer player, one of the best that's ever lived, he is known for walking around the field. He gets called lazy. People yell at him. They lament the fact that he seems lazy on the field. The reality is it's strategy. He is creating space. He's slowing down so that he can see the bigger picture, so that he can create a map, and so that he has the energy to deploy into the one moment that matters, to really go forward and strike and score the goal. We all need to live a little bit more like that. We need to find deliberate ways to create that space in our life so that we can process the stimulus and come back with the better response on the back end.
Okay. But I'm talking about anxiety, Sawill. I'm talking about you got your shit together. I arguably on certain days have my shit together, but a lot of people don't. And you write about how they can get it together.
Mm-hmm.
So go.
I am a believer that stress and anxiety feed on idleness. They grow and proliferate when you are not taking action in your life, when you are concerning yourself with other people, when you are scrolling on social media. Your most unhappy moments will happen during those truly idle periods, not the periods where you're meditating. That's not idleness. That's actually processing. That's growth. But those periods when you are truly idle. And when you take action, when you create movement in your life, you are literally starving them of the oxygen that they breathe. So when in doubt, what I always say is when in doubt, take action, do something. Because at the end of the day, we live in this information gathering society. We live in this world where people are getting all of their dopamine from information gathering. And dopamine from information gathering is a dangerous drug. That's, you read the book and you get the information and you feel all good about yourself, but you haven't done anything with that information. We need to get our dopamine from action, from actually going and doing something on the back end of it.
What's an anti-goal, Sawill?
The idea of anti-goals is a very interesting one. Goals, we all know about. It's the summit of the mountain, the thing that we're trying to climb towards, the focus. Anti-goals are the things that we are not willing to sacrifice in our pursuit of those goals. So basically, they're the things we don't want to happen. So as an example, let's say my goal is to become CEO of my company. My anti-goal might be being away from my family 300 nights out of the year, sacrificing my health due to the stress and all of the travel required to get to that job. I want to achieve the goal of becoming CEO, but not if it means having those anti-goals become real. The reason this is so important is, to paraphrase Charlie Munger, all I want to know is where I'm going to die, so I'll never go there. Mm-hmm. These are the places where you are going to die. And you need to understand and have them clarified in your mind so that you can avoid them as you continue to march forward towards your goals.
Okay. I consider myself somebody that has some pretty good social wealth. So define for me what social wealth is. And whether you think I'm right or wrong, and then define for me what social wealth is.
I think you're right, but I don't think it's something where we can necessarily judge others. But social wealth is all about your relationships. It's about your depth of relationships with the few close people. You know, your true, what I think of as like darkest hour friends, the people that you can call at 3 a.m. when the chips are down, when your company goes bankrupt, when you get arrested, when you're stuck, when you're in a rut. Those are your true deep relationships. Then there is the broader circle of breadth of the relationships that extend beyond that core, the communities, the spiritual networks, the things that you are connected to that kind of extend beyond the self, those higher order communities. And the combination of those two is kind of what creates your social wealth. And at the end of the day, social wealth is what provides the texture to be able to enjoy any of the other types of wealth. When you think about having any level of financial wealth, no one dreams about being on a yacht by themselves. Right? Like you want people to enjoy these things with. You don't dream of being able to go on these amazing hikes or trips or experiences by yourself. You want to have others by your side with them. So social wealth is the one that I would say most people fail to invest in. And the mindset shift here that's so important is we know that investing in our financial wealth is a smart decision, that putting away $100 today is going to compound into our future. The exact same principle applies to social wealth. Investing in your relationships today is arguably the best investment you can make because it will pay dividends for a long, long time into the future in the exact same way that a financial investment will.
Let's talk about falling in love while I've got you here. And by the way, I could talk to you for hours about this book, but I know you don't have unlimited time because I got to keep your time wealth at a high level, Sawill.
I like it.
But let's talk about falling in love.
Yeah,
the younger generation, you're in the younger generation, I'm in the older generation. Is it harder for younger people to fall in love these days, or do I have that wrong? It's just a non-scientific assessment that I'm making.
I think that social media has done a number on our brains, and young people are the primary victim of that because they grew up with social media. And social media has convinced you that falling in love is what matters. And what I always say is that falling in love is easy. Growing in love is very, very hard. And falling in love is what you see on social media. It's the Instagram filtered images. It's the perfect vacation moments. It's the fancy date nights out. Growing in love is much deeper. That is about shared struggle. It's about sitting in the mud with people. It's about the hard conversations. It's about all of those things that contribute to actually building a deep connection with someone. Shared struggle, we know, releases oxytocin in our bodies. It's the chemical that creates feelings of love and connection. Yeah. So if you live in this world of social media where you just hit the eject button as soon as things get hard, because you have this range of options right at your fingertips, you will never actually get to that growing in love phase that builds the deep relationship, that actually builds that connection that you're looking for.
So you think social media like smoking for the last generation? Is it like does social media give your brain lung cancer? Okay, that's a mixed metaphor, but I think you're following me.
I think that social media is worse than smoking. Because smoking got your lungs, social media gets your brain. And I am very worried. I mean, when I think about my son growing up in the age that he will with social media, with AI, not being able to know what is truth or a complete fake, I have deep, grave concerns for what the future of some of these technologies look like. And look, this is coming from someone who does a lot of work on social media. And I think the distinction that you need to make in your own mind is whether you are using these technologies for growth, for learning, for education, or whether you are using them for cheap, quick dopamine hits of entertainment. And there's a limit to how much of those cheap, quick fix dopamine hits of entertainment that you can have before your brain starts to fundamentally experience some level of rot. And we've all experienced this in some way, right? Like I can see my attention span getting worse from how much I use social media. Right. And it pains me, but it's just the reality that we live in.
Yeah. I mean, and it also, you want to take a longer term perspective, and if you get off social media, you have more conversations like this, you're just going to have a richer life. You write in the book that you should imagine what your 80th birthday party is like. But I'm just going to tell you right now, Sawill, I'm having a killer 69th birthday party. I'll let you, in your mind, understand why 69 is my favorite number. We'll just leave it there. But I'm not waiting
Nice.
till 80. I'm not waiting to 80 to have this party.
Well, I expect an invite to 69 then. That's good.
Yeah, because it's a few moments away from now. Okay, you're going to blink and it's going to be here. But why? Why imagine yourself at age 80 at your birthday party?
This exercise of imagining that future self is really the best way that I can think of for clarifying your actions in the present. So thinking about yourself and what you're going to feel like and be like physically at your 80th birthday party is a good way to assess whether you are taking the right actions in the present to create a future that you actually want. And the question is, are you going to be dancing at your 80th birthday party? All your friends and family are there and they want you to come out to the dance floor. Are you going to be capable of getting out on the dance floor and busting out a move and dancing to your favorite songs with your favorite people at that party? Or are you going to be debilitated? Are you going to be in a position where you cannot? And fundamentally, the seeds of that future outcome are being sown right now through your daily habits, through the things that you are doing. I went to my 10-year college reunion recently, and looking around, I had this powerful realization that some of the people looked 50 and some of the people looked 30. And the reality is your daily habits show up on your face after 10 years. So now imagine after 50 years, what the impact is going to be on your face, on your entire body. You control those things on a daily basis. You are controlling that future, and your future self is the direct heir of all of the decisions and the habits that you have in the present.
So Charlie Munger is a Capricorn. Benjamin Franklin is a Capricorn. Sawill Bloom is a Capricorn. Am I right?
I'm a Capricorn. Yeah, okay. January 5th.
Okay. And my birthday's on January 6th, which used to be Trump Insurrection Day, but it's now Trump Freedom Day, this schedule. Okay, so do you believe in the horoscopes? You think that there's something to the...
My wife definitely does. So by default, I go along with it.
So when is your wife's birthday?
My wife is April 5th.
So she's an Aries. Okay,
yeah.
Capricorn Aries relationship. So I just asking, just throwing it out there. Okay, give me the single greatest investment in the world. You write about it in your book, Sawill. What is it?
My dad, when I graduated college, gave me a single piece of advice, which was never think twice about investments in yourself. And he talked about those as quality food, fitness, personal development, sleep, mental health. All of these things are investments that you can make in yourself that pay dividends over a long period of time. And that guidance, I think, has been the single best piece of advice that I've received going into my life and into my career. And it is what I consider to be the best investment that you can possibly make.
Okay. So your point being more education, more books, better healthcare, better training, meaning physical training.
Yeah, lean into yourself. I mean, you are the only investment that you make that has an infinite hold period. Mm-hmm. Everything else is temporary. So lean into yourself, go all in on you, and you won't regret it.
So what is something that you regret?
Oh, I have a lot of regrets, unfortunately. Although I don't really believe in regret in a technical sense if you are happy with where you are. Because all of those things contributed to the type of person that you are today and the path you are on. I do have real regrets about the fact that I allowed my relationship with my parents and with my sister to atrophy over those years while I was chasing money. That I didn't call, that I didn't spend time, that I didn't open up about the things that I was facing, because those are years that I'm never going to get back. And as much as it's been remedied now and that we are so close and we all spend so much time together, I really do have regrets around that.
Okay. All right. Fair enough. I think we all have some regrets, but I do agree with you. Self-pity, playing the victim, and having regrets are wasteful. It's just not necessary. Bad energy comes out of all those things. So, all right, we're now at the point in the podcast where we've taken 5 words from your book. And so I'm going to say the word, and then I need a 1 or 2 sentence reaction from you. All right, you ready?
Yeah.
All right, so I say the word time. You think of what?
Flying by faster than you can ever imagine.
Okay, but it's a relative word, though, right? Time is relative.
It is relative. Right. There is a recognition in all of
that.
Einstein
said it was an illusion, Sawill.
Yeah. There is a recognition that you are in much more control than you think, and that you can take action to actually create time with the people that you care about most.
Okay, so when I read your book, I hear the word time. I think take control of your time. Learn to say no to things that aren't important to you. Learn to say yes to things that are. Okay, I'm going to say the word social. You say what?
Loving relationships with the people that truly matter in your life, leaning into those energy creating relationships on a daily basis and investing in them as your most precious investment.
See, when I read your book and I see the word social, love and care about the people close to you and care about what they think about you, but don't care about what other people think about you is none of your business, right? Ultimately, if you can create that defense barrier, you'll be a lot healthier, which is a good segue into the word mental.
Find your path and ignore those that have been handed to you by others. Pay the price on a daily basis for your distinctiveness as a human being.
Okay. What about physical?
Take the daily actions to invest in your body and fight against the natural decay and atrophy that aging is going to put upon you.
How old are you now?
I'm 34.
Okay, so I got you by 27 years, pal. All right, my boobs are starting to sag. So
you're doing good. You're doing good for yourself.
My boobs are starting to sag. Okay, let's talk about financial.
Find your version of enough. I think that expectations are the single greatest financial liability, and understanding your version of enough is the single most important thing that you can do.
Do you think, like I do, that I don't know. When I worked at I was a private banker and I was a financial advisor. I called it a miserable millionaires club. I couldn't believe how rich. I mean, I grew up with no money, so just the fact that whatever I have, I'm delighted by. But I feel like expectations really hamper mental health. If you have 0 expectations, you're delighted with life. If you've got all these expectations, I went into the hedge fund industry. I went from miserable millionaires to miserable billionaires. What is that all about, Sawill?
Stress is fundamentally experienced when there is a gap between your present reality and your expectations. And in particular, when you don't have a real plan to close that gap. And so in that light, you can think of expectations as the real governor on your ability to experience happiness. Because if your expectations continue to inflate, if you continue to compare yourself to others and people that have extraordinary things and amounts, you will never feel happy with what you have. You'll constantly be chasing someone else's more that may or may not actually matter to you.
So it's so well said. Okay, so the last one, this is the bonus word, wealth, and the concept of wealth. What does it mean to you?
I feel wealthiest when I am able to take my son in the pool at 1 p.m. on a Tuesday. That is my definition of a wealthy life. Being able to do that, having the time and the freedom to do it, being healthy of mind and body to do that, having enough money so that I'm able to have a pool and do that, and having the loving connection with my son to be able to have him want to do that with me. That is my definition of wealth.
All right, well, good for you. You're living a balanced life. God bless you. It's a phenomenal book. I enjoyed reading it thoroughly. The 5 types of wealth, and you've got them on the top: time, social, mental, physical, financial. A transformative guide to design your dream life by Sawill Bloom. And are you proud of me that I pronounced your name right?
I am really proud of you. I am I'm super impressed. I was going to send you a text after this.
I remember shit. Okay, you Sawill Bloom. Okay, and you're a famous guy, but you're about to become very, very famous. This is an incredible book. God bless you for writing it. Are we writing another book? What are we doing?
We'll see. I'm excited to see this movement build with this one. So we'll see. Now, I never plan too far in the future. I just try to enjoy it.
Okay. Well, God bless you, man. You wrote a great book, and
Thank you.
best of luck to you and your family. Thank you for joining us on Open Book.
Thank you so much.
Hi.
Ma?
Hello?
All right.
I love you so much, baby. You make everyone tick.
All right. You had a good time at your birthday party?
Yes, I did.
Okay.
It was beautiful, and thanks, Deirdre, for finding the pocketbook that I wanted.
Okay. And you're going to walk around on those high heels still at 88? And
yeah, why not?
All right. Okay. All right.
When
So
I
you
break
want
my neck, I break my neck.
you want to come on the podcast or no?
Yeah, of course.
Of course you do, right? You have your fan base. You have to take care of your fan base, right, Ma?
I
Right?
have what?
You have to take care of your fan base, right? Like you were talking about
Yeah.
last night, right?
Right.
People know you're on the podcast, right?
Yep, they do.
All right. Okay. So, Ma, I had a guy on who wrote a book about the 5 types of wealth. His name was Sawill Bloom. So, Ma, do you think wealth is just about money, or you think there's other things that make somebody wealthy?
Make other things.
Like what?
If you have a lot of money and you only think about money, 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 it almost destroys your mind. You have to share it to the right people that would appreciate it, especially family members. I had a mother who used to give her money away to her immigrant Italians, and you take after her. What can I say?
Okay, but
you don't just think about wealth.
Okay, but why is money? But money is also important, though, right? People have to be financially.
Money talks and shit walks. But I'll tell you something on the podcast. My dad owned a lot of businesses in Fort Washington, and I had everything as a kid. When he got older, at 65, he got Parkinson's. By the time he was 87, he was pretty bad. And you know what he said to me? And he always thought about money, 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 money. You know, he wasn't the giver that my mother was. But he said, wealth is health. Don't ever forget it, because I have this, and all the money I have made, I could never buy my health. And I believe that, though.
All right. So, what are other things that make somebody wealthy, Mom? Not money, but
a good mind.
A good,
very, very smart business sense, and a very good mind.
Okay, but a good mind means also staying in balance, right? Not getting too depressed or too anxious, right? So how do you keep from getting anxious, Ma? What's the secret?
I have an outside interest besides this money, money, money. You have to like exercise, and you have to see the world beautiful, and you have to look at people equal, and you have everything. They have money. You have the humanity of being good to people. You know, I think you know. I know you go nuts, but you're my son, and I think you're perfect.
Okay. All right. Thanks, Mom. Most moms think their sons are perfect, Mom. It's good. Hey, thank you for watching this episode. If you enjoyed this episode, here's another one right up here that you might like.